I never thought my life would turn into a bad movie cliché. Yet there I was, standing in the doorway of our bedroom, watching the woman I loved writhing under another man. My brain refused to process what I was seeing. The sheets we had picked out together, the pillows we had chosen for comfort, the bed we had spent countless nights in. It was all tainted now. A sick feeling spread through my stomach as the sounds of their passion filled the air, mixing with the scent of perfume and sweat. It was disgusting. I felt like a ghost, invisible to them, as if I had already been erased from this life we were supposed to be building together. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss new stories. If you enjoyed this one, leave a like, it really helps. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss. My body moved on its own. I stepped back into the hallway, turned around, and walked out of the apartment. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream or demand an explanation. What was there to say? I had seen everything I needed to see. My mind raced as I reached my car, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I was supposed to be excited about becoming a father. I was supposed to be preparing for doctor's appointments and baby names. Instead, I was sitting in my car, feeling like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Was it even my child? The thought hit me like a punch to the gut. I drove without a destination, just needing to get away. The city blurred past me as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. Kicking open the door and beating that guy into the ground would have been satisfying, but what then? Would it have changed anything? Would it have erased the image now burned into my brain? No, it wouldn't have undone the betrayal. It wouldn't have changed the fact that the woman I trusted, the woman carrying what I thought was my child, had thrown everything away. I pulled into an empty parking lot and killed the engine. My heart was still racing, my breath uneven. My phone vibrated in my pocket, but I didn't look at it. I already knew who it was. The thought of hearing her voice, of listening to whatever excuse she had prepared, made my stomach turn. I got out of the car, the cool night air hitting my face as I leaned against the hood, staring up at the dark sky. Was there a moment I had missed? A sign I had ignored? Had she ever really loved me, or was I just a convenient placeholder until something better came along? The memories came flooding back, each one now laced with doubt. The way she had started staying out later, blaming it on pregnancy cravings and needing me time. The times she had been distant, scrolling through her phone with a small smile she never bothered explaining. The moments I had told myself she was just tired, that she was overwhelmed with the changes happening in our lives. I had reassured myself, convinced myself that I was overthinking. I had trusted her. A sharp laugh escaped my throat. Trust? What a joke. I thought about going home, about confronting her, but what was the point? She had made her choice. I wasn't about to beg for an explanation. I wasn't about to sit through her lies. I needed time to think, to figure out my next move. I needed to get the hell away from her. I checked my phone. 10 missed calls, a dozen messages. I didn't open them. Instead, I texted my best friend, Matt. Need a place to crash. Don't ask, just say yes. He responded instantly. Of course, man, what's going on? I didn't reply. I wasn't ready to say the words out loud. When I pulled up to Matt's house, he was already waiting outside, leaning against his porch railing with a beer in hand. His expression turned serious the second he saw me. What happened? He asked, but I shook my head, walking past him into the house. He followed me inside, closing the door behind us. I sat down on his couch, running a hand through my hair. My whole body felt exhausted, like the weight of what had happened had finally settled in. Matt sat across from me, setting the beer down. "You look like hell," he said. "And considering you didn't answer my question, I'm guessing it's bad." I let out a slow breath. She cheated on me. Saying it out loud made it real in a way that nothing else had. Matt's expression darkened. "What?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. I walked in on her, this morning, in our bed. The words felt foreign coming out of my mouth. Matt exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "Jesus, Alex, I'm so sorry, man." I nodded, staring at the floor. "Yeah, me too." He ran a hand down his face, anger flashing in his eyes. Tell me you at least punched the guy." "No," I said. Didn't even say a word, just left. Matt was silent for a moment, then let out a low whistle. "Damn, that's brutal." He grabbed another beer and handed it to me. "What are you gonna do?" I twisted the cap off the bottle but didn't take a sip. "First thing, I need to know if the kid is mine." Matt's expression hardened. "You think it's not?" I let out a humorless laugh. I don't know what to think anymore. Silence settled between us. The weight of everything pressed down on me, but for the first time since I walked out of that apartment, I felt something else simmering beneath the hurt. It wasn't just pain. It was anger, not the kind that made you reckless, but the kind that made you plan. I wasn't going to scream, wasn't going to break things. I was going to find out the truth, and when I did, I'd make sure she regretted every single lie she ever told me. I woke up on Matt's couch with a dull ache in my chest, the kind that came from a night of restless sleep and too many thoughts running in circles. The weight of reality hit me the second my eyes opened. This wasn't just a bad dream. Claire had cheated on me. I had walked in on it with my own eyes. And the worst part? She was pregnant. That thought alone made my stomach twist. I didn't even know if the baby was mine. Matt was already in the kitchen when I got up, sipping coffee, scrolling through his phone. He glanced at me, his expression unreadable. "How are you holding up?" he asked. I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling, "Like shit." He nodded as if that was the only possible answer. "You want coffee?" "Yeah, thanks." I sat down at the table, and for a few moments we just sat there in silence. I was grateful he wasn't pushing me to talk. He had already done enough by letting me crash at his place without asking questions. But eventually, I had to face it. "She's been blowing up my phone," I muttered, glancing at the screen. 22 missed calls, countless messages. I hadn't opened a single one. Matt raised an eyebrow. "You gonna talk to her?" I scoffed. "What's there to say? Hey, Claire, just wondering, were you screwing him the whole time, or was I just lucky enough to walk in on the first time?" I shook my head, gripping the coffee mug. "She's just gonna lie, Matt. She's gonna cry and say she's sorry, say it was a mistake, beg me to forgive her, and if I ask about the kid, she'll swear up and down it's mine." Matt leaned back in his chair. "So, what are you gonna do?" I stared down at my coffee, my jaw tightening. I need a paternity test. The words felt cold, but there was no way around it. I wasn't going to raise another man's child. Matt nodded. "You sure you even want to go through with that? I mean, let's be real, man. Do you even want to stay in this mess?" I exhaled slowly. "I don't know what I want. But if I walk away without knowing the truth, I'll never get closure. I need to know." The next few days were a blur. I didn't respond to Claire. I ignored every call, every message, every pathetic attempt to reach me. At first, her texts were desperate. "Alex, please, just talk to me. I made a mistake." Then came the guilt trips. "I need you. The baby needs you." And then, predictably, the anger. "You're just gonna walk away like a coward. You're not even man enough to have a conversation?" I deleted each one without responding. She didn't deserve a conversation. Not yet. By the end of the week, I finally made a move. I scheduled a paternity test, but there was one problem. Claire had to agree to it. And I knew damn well she wasn't going to just roll over and say, "Sure, let's see if I've been lying to you this whole time." No, this was going to take some planning. I finally answered her call. The second I picked up, she burst into tears. "Alex, oh my God, I've been trying to reach you. Please just let me explain." I cut her off. "Save it. I don't want your excuses, Claire. I just need one thing from you." She hesitated. "What?" "A paternity test." Silence. Then, a shaky breath. "Alex, you know this is your baby." I laughed bitterly. "Do I? Because from where I was standing, you didn't seem too loyal to me." "It was a mistake," she whispered. I clenched my jaw. "I don't care. We're past that. This isn't about us anymore. This is about that baby. If you want me involved, I need proof." Another pause. "And if I say no, then you get to raise that kid without me." She started crying again, but I didn't flinch. Maybe a part of me wanted to believe she was telling the truth, that this was just some one-time mistake, but I couldn't afford to be that naive. I wasn't going to let guilt or emotion cloud my judgment. I gave her the details for the test and told her she had until the end of the week to decide. The next few days were torture. I barely slept. My mind wouldn't shut off. What if the test came back and it really was mine? What then? Could I even look at that kid and not think about what Claire had done? And what if it wasn't mine? Would I feel relief or just more emptiness? Matt tried to distract me, dragging me to the gym, forcing me to eat, but none of it helped. My life felt like it was hanging in limbo, waiting for an answer that could change everything. Claire finally agreed. We met at the clinic. She looked awful. Pale, eyes swollen from crying. For a brief second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the image of her tangled up with another man in our bed, and any sympathy I might have had evaporated. We barely spoke. The test itself was simple. A quick cheek swab, a few signatures, and then the waiting game began. They told us results would take a week. 7 more days of uncertainty. 7 more days of pretending I had control over anything. That night, I lay on Matt's couch, staring at the ceiling, exhaustion pressing down on me, but sleep refusing to come. I had spent years building a future with Claire, trusting her, believing in the life we were supposed to have. And now, all of it hinged on a single test. I didn't know what I was hoping for. All I knew was that nothing would ever be the same again. The week of waiting for the test results was hell. Every day felt like I was balancing on the edge of a knife, waiting for something to push me over. Claire kept texting me, acting like the test was a waste of time, like I should just accept her word and pretend none of this ever happened. She tried every angle. Apologies, anger, guilt, even fake optimism about our future. I didn't respond. She had no idea that I had already moved past needing her words. I needed proof, and once I had it, I would decide what came next. The problem was, waiting wasn't enough for me. I wasn't the kind of guy who could sit still and let things play out. I needed control. I needed to be the one calling the shots. I couldn't let Claire get comfortable thinking she could manipulate her way out of this. I had to stay 2 steps ahead. So, while I waited for the results, I started putting together a plan. Something that would ensure she felt the full weight of her choices. Something that would make sure she couldn't just sweep this under the rug and move on like nothing had happened. I started by gathering everything I could on her lover. I didn't know much about him other than what I saw that day, but that was enough to start. Claire hadn't been sleeping with some random guy. The way they were together, the ease with which he was in my apartment, the way he touched her like he had done it 100 times before. It wasn't a one-time mistake. This had been going on for a while, and that meant he had something to lose. After some digging, I found out his name. Ethan Carter. He wasn't just some nobody. He was married. That was the first win. His wife, Jessica, had no idea her husband was screwing around behind her back, and I was about to change that. I found her social media, scrolled through years of happy pictures, anniversary posts, vacations, sappy captions about how she had married her best friend. It made me sick. I knew exactly how that felt. Believing you were with someone who loved you, only to realize you had been living in a lie. But I wasn't just going to send her a message and dump the truth on her. That was sloppy. I wanted to make sure that when this all came crashing down, it hit both Ethan and Claire in the worst way possible. I needed undeniable proof, something they couldn't talk their way out of. So, I set a trap. Claire had been trying to get me to meet with her, saying we needed to talk things through like adults. I agreed, but I set the terms. I told her I wanted closure, that I needed to see her one last time to process everything before making my decision about the baby. She jumped at the chance. She probably thought she was finally getting to me, that she could still find a way to keep me from leaving. She had no idea what was coming. I told her to meet me at a quiet cafe somewhere out of the way. I showed up early and made sure I had the perfect setup. I positioned my phone just right, recording everything. When she arrived, she looked exhausted, but She had dressed up, like she still thought she could fix this with the right words and the right amount of fake remorse. She sat down, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away. "I just need honesty, Claire," I said, keeping my voice even. "No more lies, no more half-truths. Just tell me how long it's been going on." She hesitated, biting her lip, eyes searching mine for any sign of weakness. "It didn't mean anything, Alex, I swear. It was just a mistake." I leaned forward. A mistake that happened once, or a mistake that's been happening for months? She flinched. That was the crack I needed. 3 months, she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. But it wasn't serious, I swear. It was just, I don't know, I felt disconnected. I was scared about the baby, about everything changing, and I cut her off. "Is it his?" Her breath hitched. That moment of hesitation told me everything. "No," she said, shaking her head quickly. "It's yours. I know it is." I wanted to laugh. She had no idea I already had the test results coming. She had no idea that every word she spoke was being recorded. I kept pushing. "So, Ethan meant nothing to you?" She looked away. "It wasn't like that." I tilted my head. "Really? Then why are you still talking to him?" Her face paled. "I'm not." I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. On the screen was a screenshot of her last call log. Ethan's name was right there, multiple times. "You sure about that?" She stared at it, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to find a way to spin this, but there was nothing she could say. I leaned back in my chair. "Here's what's going to happen, Claire. I'm done with you. I don't care what happens between you and Ethan, but his wife deserves to know what kind of man she married. And you don't get to walk away from this like nothing happened." Her eyes widened. "Alex, please." I stood up. "Enjoy the rest of your day." I left her sitting there, shaking, knowing she had lost control of the situation. I could almost feel sorry for her, but then I remembered what she had done to me. That sympathy vanished. That night I sent everything to Jessica. Recordings, screenshots, times, dates. It was more than enough to destroy Ethan's marriage. I didn't add a message. The evidence spoke for itself. She saw it within an hour. The fallout was immediate. Claire called me the next morning, her voice frantic. "What did you do?" she screamed into the phone. "Jessica kicked Ethan out. He's blaming me. He's saying it was all my fault, that I manipulated him. His life is ruined." I smirked. "Sounds like you two deserve each other." She started crying, but I didn't care. She wanted me to hurt the way she had hurt me, but I wasn't going to let her win. She thought she could cheat and get away with it. She thought I would just walk away broken and defeated. She was wrong. The results arrived 2 days later. I stared at the email for a long time before opening it, my hands clenched into fists. My entire future, every ounce of uncertainty, all of it came down to this. When I finally clicked on it, my eyes scanned the words over and over, making sure I wasn't misreading. Probability of paternity, 0%. I let out a slow breath. There it was, undeniable proof. The baby wasn't mine. Claire had lied to me in the worst possible way. I had spent weeks wondering if I was overreacting, if maybe I was being too harsh, but the truth was staring me in the face. I had been nothing more than a backup plan, the guy she could string along while she played house with someone else. For a few minutes I just sat there, letting the weight of it settle in. I should have felt relief. I should have been glad that I wasn't tied to Claire for the rest of my life. But all I felt was rage. Not the kind that made you reckless, but the kind that settled deep in your bones, the kind that made you plan. Claire had humiliated me, had lied to me for months, and had expected me to roll over and accept it. She had tried to manipulate me, tried to guilt-trip me into staying, and worst of all, she had tried to pass off another man's child as mine. She thought she could walk away from this without consequences. She was wrong. I started putting together my final move. Claire had been trying to convince people that this was just a misunderstanding, that she and I were working through things, that we were still planning to be a family. She hadn't told anyone the truth. She was still lying to her friends, her family, acting like she had everything under control. I was about to take that control away from her. The opportunity came faster than I expected. A mutual friend, Sarah, was throwing a dinner party, one Claire and I had originally planned to attend together before everything fell apart. Claire was still going, and she had probably told everyone some sugar-coated version of events, making herself look like the victim. I texted Sarah and asked if I could still come. She was thrilled. Claire had no idea what was coming. The night of the party, I arrived early. People were happy to see me, asking how I was doing, offering me drinks, clearly sensing there was tension between Claire and me, but not knowing the full extent of it. Claire showed up half an hour later, her face carefully composed, as if she had rehearsed how she was going to act. She glanced at me but didn't say anything at first. She wanted to control the situation, to dictate how the narrative played out, but this wasn't her story to tell anymore. At dinner, the conversation eventually turned to us. Someone asked if we were working things out, and Claire put on a sad smile. "We're trying," she said, looking at me as if she expected me to play along. "It's been a difficult time, but we're taking it one day at a time." I almost laughed. "That's interesting," I said, setting my drink down. "Because last I checked, there's nothing left to work out." She stiffened. "Alex, this isn't the place." "No, Claire, this is exactly the place," I cut in. "You've been telling people we're working things out, but you left out some important details." I pulled out my phone. "Like how you were sleeping with Ethan for months, or how you tried to convince me that your baby was mine when the test says otherwise." I tapped the screen, and the email with the paternity results appeared in front of everyone. The silence was deafening. Claire's face went pale, her mouth opening and closing like she was struggling to form words. The people around the table stared at the screen, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock to disgust. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Claire reached for my arm. "Alex, please." I pulled away. "Don't. You had plenty of chances to be honest. Instead, you lied to me. You lied to everyone here. You let them believe we were still together, still trying, when in reality, you were just hoping I'd be stupid enough to take responsibility for someone else's kid." I turned to the group. She didn't just cheat. She tried to trap me, and she would have kept lying if I hadn't forced her hand. Claire's eyes filled with tears, but no one was rushing to comfort her. The room was heavy with judgment, with people realizing just how deep her deception ran. She tried again, her voice shaking. "It wasn't like that. I was scared, Alex. I didn't know how to tell you." I let out a bitter laugh. "You didn't know how to tell me? You mean you didn't want to, because then you'd have to face the fact that you ruined everything." I looked around. "How many of you knew? How many of you suspected and said nothing?" No one spoke. Some looked away, embarrassed. Others looked at Claire like they were seeing her for the first time. She had spent so much time crafting an image of herself as the victim, and now that mask had been ripped off in front of everyone. Finally, Claire stood up, her face red with humiliation. "I can't do this," she muttered, grabbing her purse. She turned to me, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant to hurt you." I met her gaze, my expression cold. "But you did, and now you get to live with it." She rushed out of the house, and for a few moments, no one moved. Then Sarah cleared her throat. "Well, that was intense." Someone else muttered, "I can't believe she did that." I exhaled, suddenly feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The weight of her lies, the burden of wondering if I was making the right choice, it was gone. Everyone knew the truth now. There was no more pretending, no more manipulation. Claire had been exposed, and she would never be able to rewrite the story in her favor again. I didn't stay much longer after that. People kept coming up to me, apologizing, saying they had no idea, saying they supported me. I appreciated it, but I didn't need their sympathy. I had already won. As I drove home, I replayed the moment in my head, the look on her face when she realized she had lost, the way the room had turned against her, the finality of it all. This was never about revenge, it was about justice. Claire had made me feel small, like I was nothing, like I was disposable. But I wasn't the one who had been thrown away. She was. After Claire's public humiliation, I thought I would feel satisfied, maybe even free. But the truth was, there was still unfinished business. Exposing her lies had been necessary, but it wasn't enough. She had spent months lying, manipulating, and trying to trap me in a life I never agreed to. She had wanted to control the outcome, to decide how the story ended. That choice was no longer hers. The first thing I did was make sure I was legally protected. I had already cut ties with Claire, but I wasn't going to take any chances. I contacted a lawyer, laid everything out. The infidelity, the paternity test, the attempted fraud. He assured me that I had no legal responsibility for the child, and that Claire had no grounds to come after me for anything. I had dodged a bullet, but I wanted to make sure she couldn't find another way to screw me over. So I had him draft a formal declaration of non-paternity, making it crystal clear that I was not, and never would be, responsible for the child she was carrying. Once that was handled, I turned my attention to Ethan. I had already blown up his marriage, but I wanted to make sure his professional life took a hit too. I did some more digging and found out that his company had a strict morality clause in their contracts. Extramarital affairs that caused public scandal could be grounds for termination. The screenshots I had sent to Jessica, his wife, had already started making the rounds. She wasn't just quietly divorcing him, she was angry, and she wanted the world to know what kind of man he really was. I made sure those screenshots landed in the inbox of Ethan's boss. A week later, he was fired. Claire wasn't faring much better. After the dinner party, she had gone into damage control mode, desperately trying to salvage her reputation. But there was nothing left to save. The people who had once defended her were now avoiding her. Friends she had lied to weren't returning her calls. Word had spread fast, and it didn't take long for her life to start crumbling. She moved out of our old apartment, unable to afford it on her own. The guy she had betrayed me for, Ethan, wanted nothing to do with her now that his life was ruined. She was alone, and for the first time, she had no one to manipulate. Then she reached out to me. At first, I ignored her messages, but she was persistent. "Alex, please, I just want to talk. I know I messed up. I just need a chance to explain." I had no interest in hearing her excuses, but I realized something. Claire was a woman who thrived on control. She had always believed she could talk her way out of anything, that she could fix things if she just said the right words. I decided to give her one last conversation, not because I cared about what she had to say, but because I wanted her to know, without a shadow of a doubt, that she had lost everything. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting at a table in the back, her hands wrapped around a cup as if she was trying to find comfort in its warmth. She looked different. The confidence, the smugness, the sense of superiority? It was gone. She gave me a weak smile when I sat down. "Thank you for coming." I didn't return the smile. "Say what you need to say." She hesitated, then let out a shaky breath. "I know I hurt you. I know I made mistakes. But I never wanted things to end up like this." I tilted my head. "You mean you never thought you'd get caught?" Her face tightened. "That's not fair." I leaned forward. "Isn't it? You cheated on me for months. You lied to me. You tried to convince me I was the father of a child that wasn't mine. And then, when everything fell apart, you still acted like you were the victim." I shook my head. "No, Claire. What's not fair is that I had to find out the truth the way I did. What's not fair is that you took away my ability to choose what kind of life I wanted. You tried to trap me." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt nothing. She wasn't crying because she regretted what she had done. She was crying because she had lost. "I was scared," she whispered. "I didn't know what to do." I sat back. "You could have been honest. You could have told me the truth from the beginning, but you didn't. And now you have to live with the consequences." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Alex, please. Can't we at least be friends?" I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "Friends? You think I could ever trust you again? You think I want you anywhere near my life?" She swallowed hard. "I don't know how to fix this." I stood up. "You can't. and I don't care." I walked out, leaving her sitting there with tears streaming down her face. That was the last time I ever spoke to Claire. She tried reaching out a few more times, but I ignored her. She had nothing left to offer me. No more lies to spin, no more games to play. I was free. And that was the greatest revenge of all. In the months that followed, my life slowly returned to normal. I focused on work, reconnected with friends, and started feeling like myself again. The anger faded, replaced by something stronger: clarity. Claire had taken so much from me, but she hadn't destroyed me. She had only made me stronger, more aware, more careful about who I let into my life. One day, I got a text from Jessica, Ethan's ex-wife. "I just wanted to say thank you for telling me the truth. I deserved to know." I smiled, deleting the message. I didn't need thanks. I had done what was right, and that was enough. I had no idea where Claire was now, and I didn't care. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. As for me, I was finally moving forward, and, for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Months passed, and life slowly started to feel normal again. The rage, the betrayal, the need for revenge, all of it had faded into something quieter, something easier to carry. I no longer woke up every morning thinking about Claire or Ethan or the wreckage they had left behind. Their downfall had been swift and absolute, and now they were nothing more than a bad memory. I had spent so much time letting my pain define me, but now, for the first time, I felt like I was stepping into something new. I moved out of the city, away from the places that reminded me of what had happened. I found a place near the coast, somewhere quiet, where I could breathe without feeling the weight of my past pressing down on me. It wasn't a dramatic escape, just a fresh start, the kind of place where no one knew me, where I wasn't the guy whose fiancé had cheated, lied, and tried to trap him with a child that wasn't his. Here, I was just Alex. I focused on work, threw myself into projects, and found comfort in routine. I reconnected with old friends, made new ones, and let myself enjoy the things I had once loved but had neglected for too long. I picked up hobbies I had abandoned, spent time outdoors, learned how to be alone without feeling lonely. It wasn't an instant transformation. Some nights I still found myself staring at the ceiling, remembering the worst of it. But those nights grew fewer, and eventually they stopped altogether. One evening, as I sat on the patio of a small cafe near the water, sipping a drink and watching the sunset, I realized how different I felt. There was no bitterness left, no anger, no resentment. Claire had once taken up so much space in my life, in my mind, but now she was nothing, just a person I used to know. I had spent months wanting her to suffer, but now I didn't care. Whatever happened to her wasn't my problem. She had destroyed herself. That was enough. That was the night I met Emma. It wasn't some grand, dramatic moment. She wasn't someone who walked in and suddenly made me forget everything. She was just a woman who sat at the table next to mine, struggling to untangle the mess of headphones in her lap. I chuckled, and she looked up, giving me a sheepish grin. "You'd think I'd have mastered this by now," she said, shaking her head. I smirked. "They say if you give them enough time, they untangle themselves." She rolled her eyes. "I don't have that kind of patience." It was small talk, simple and easy, and when she left, I didn't think much of it. But a week later, I ran into her again, and then again, and before I knew it, she wasn't just a familiar face. I was looking forward to seeing her. She was different from Claire. There was no pretense, no mind games, no calculated words designed to manipulate. She was just herself, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could just be myself too. We took things slow. I wasn't in a rush to throw myself into something new, and she wasn't the type to push. We got coffee, walked along the shore, talked about everything and nothing. I never told her about Claire, and she never asked. She didn't need to know. That part of my life was over. This was something new. One night, as we sat on the sand watching the waves roll in, Emma glanced at me, her expression thoughtful. You ever feel like everything had to fall apart just so you could end up exactly where you were meant to be? I thought about the pain, the betrayal, the months of anger and planning. And then I thought about where I was now. The peace, the freedom, the possibility of something better. I smiled, looking out at the ocean. Yeah, I said, I do.